A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is an HBO fantasy drama television series created by Ira Parker and George R.R. Martin. It's an adaptation of the Tales of Dunk and Egg series of novellas, beginning with The Hedge Knight. The six-episode series premiered on the 18th of January 2026. Set about a century before the Game of Thrones timeline, during an earlier era of Targaryen rule, it follows the adventures of Hedge Knight Sir Duncan the Tall and his young squire, Egg. The good. I haven't dipped myself in the Westeros lore since the finale of Game of Thrones, which would best be described in the Shona proverb, "Udonedza chirongo washika," which roughly means dropping the clay pot just as you arrive. Because of that, I never got around to watching The House of Dragons, and then along came A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. I initially imagined it to be a sort of low-budget Game of Thrones comedic spoof, given its bright aesthetics and light-hearted comic elements, which would seem to herald the production being another money-grab scheme full of explosive diarrhea. But it manages to worm its way into something one can care about, a simple tale about a man trying to get recognition as a knight and a warm meal. Peter Claffey is perfectly cast as Dunk, tall, strong, with a heart just as big, and a refreshingly earnest belief in the path of a knight. His portrayal balances the character's brutish physique with a restrained emotional depth that helps ground the show's moral center away from the grandiose behavior of the great houses and their ambition, greed, incest, and all their royal pain, which has previously defined the Game of Thrones world. You do not need to have watched Game of Thrones or House of Dragons, which is set 50 years before this. You won't have to keep track of the houses and their family lines and constantly check for whose ancestor did what to whom. Of course, while you will hear familiar names like Baratheon and Targaryen, all you need to follow along is the story of Dunk and Egg. Dexter Soul Ansel as Egg made the character lovable and memorable, lighting up the screen with a natural presence far beyond his years. With a head shaped bold to resemble an egg, delicate yet surprisingly resilient and somewhat stubborn, with a potential to hatch into something more. While I haven't read the source books yet, they are now on my TBR. I've heard that the story stays faithful to the Hedge Knight novella, preserving the themes and tone of George R.R. Martin's writing. The bad. With an average running time of around 32 minutes, the episodes can feel rather short, especially if one waited for weekly episode drops. I binge watched them all in one sitting, and I recommend you do not start watching this show if you have other business that requires your attention. It will suck you in. If you are looking for the trademark Game of Thrones Vala Morghulis epic level action and intrigue, you may find this show a little slow with its character-driven storytelling that focuses mainly on a hedge knight, the saddest sort of knight. The ugly, while it's supposed to be about honor and doing the right thing, there doesn't seem to be much glory in being a hedge knight, where no good deed goes unpunished, as idealism often meets the sharp edge of reality. Final thoughts. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is a welcome addition to the Game of Thrones universe, shedding much of the dark and gritty undertones for something lighter, gentler, and quietly comedic. Season 2 is already in production and scheduled for a 2027 release. It will adapt the second Dunk and Egg novella, The Swan Sword. Have you watched A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms? Does it sound like something you would watch?